Good morning and welcome again, and very nice to see everybody. And a special thanks to Foreign Minister Han for a really very illuminating talk about Northeast Asia. Thank you very much. So we're here to discuss a new model of US-China relations, and I guess the basic question is there such a thing? I would just like to mention that we had the Sunnylands Summit in June where President Obama and Xi Jinping met face-to-face for 2 days. And afterwards, everybody on both sides was talking in glowing terms about the spirit of Sunnylands. But is there really such a spirit? That's the question. And what has changed since Wang Jishe and Ken Lieberthal wrote a very interesting piece last year for the Brookings Institution titled "The US-China Strategic Distrust"? In that article, Wang Jishe said China viewed the United States as no longer, quote, that awesome, nor is it trustworthy, and its example to the world and admonitions to China should therefore be much discounted. In short, he said, China saw the United States as a declining power. And since then, we've seen the shutdown of the American government, difficulties of the United States getting the Trans-Pacific Partnership together, and the revelations by Edward Snowden about the mammoth cyber operations of the United States. So I think a question for us all here on the panel and in the audience is, what has changed for the positive since Wang Jishe and Ken Lieberthal wrote those fairly tough words? So just to discuss all this, we have Professor Chung from Renmin University, who studied at the Fairbanks Center at Harvard University in the late 90s and looked at the question of US-China relations then. We have Professor Chu, Professor of Chinese Foreign Policy in the Department of Chinese Studies at Kyung-hee University in South Korea, and he has taught at the University of Singapore, among other places. We have Chris Johnson, who is a senior advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, who spent nearly 2 decades in US government intelligence and foreign affairs communities, and I might add, has had the distinction of briefing President Obama before he's had to deal with big China issues. We have Professor Liu Ming, who is professor and executive director of the Institute of International Relations and the director of the Center for Korea Studies at the Shanghai Academy of Social Sciences. He was a visiting scholar at Columbia University, Seoul National University, and at Stanford University. And we're very happy to have as 2 discussants, Dr. Gong, who is from the Center for Asian Pacific Studies at the Shanghai Institute for International Studies. And last but not least, because he's a journalist, we have Ha Taiwan, who is editorial writer for the very distinguished South Korean newspaper, Hong'a Ilbo. Dr. Chung.
And I'd like to thank Asan to put me back to the podium to have second chance to talk to the large group of distinguished guests and friends. And also, I'm not well prepared for these topics, but I feel a little bit confident to discuss the models, or we call the new types of major countries relationship. And because I just returned back to the States and from 10-day trips, and in which I talked to the leading American experts from think tank and also American officials on these issues. So I returned back to Beijing with some strong impressions I'd like to share with all you guys. Number one is when we talk about new types of major countries, China use country, not power, major countries relationship, and most American scholars and even officials had no ideas the exact content of this concept. And many of them believe this is a propaganda device coined by Chinese leaders to promote China's own agendas. And also, so some of the scholars believe this is not new concept because the previous Chinese leaders already formulate or articulate some of the elements of this concept. And another group of scholars believe if United States accept Chinese concept of new types of major countries relationship, and that would be interpreted as a kind of appeasement to more aggressive China. And the last, and I believe some of the American scholars and officials believe this is just a concept, and the United States must wait and see if Chinese government could really materialize or put these ideas into practice. So that's the basic impressions when I return back to China after very intensive discussions with American counterparts and officials. And for China, scholars and officials are quite enthusiastic about these ideas. And the number of the leading scholars include Yang Jiemian and Yuan Peng, also the Wang Yiwei. The scholars publish articles in attempt to explain or substantiate this concept because we all know this concept was first articulated by Xi Jinping last December's when he visited the United States. So according to Xi Jinping's ideas, the new types of major countries relationship should contain a number of the elements. Number one is no conflict. Number two, no confrontations. Number three, mutual respect. And number four is win-win cooperations. It sounds good, sounds attractive, sounds very constructive. But when we study each element, we're going to find it's very hard to offer detailed action plans or action map. For example, no conflict. We see in the past several months China and the United States conflict over a number of issues. And the two countries are North Korea, for example. The two countries share a common interest to persuade the DPRK to abandon its nuclear program. But how to persuade the DPRK to abandon its nuclear program become a bone of contentions between the two countries. And also on Diaoyu Island dispute, and China and United States also conflict each other's. And United States basically maintains it had no positions on the sovereignty issues surrounding Diaoyu Island, but the Diaoyu Island came under the scope of security treaties. That's put China and the United States at odds. And a couple of weeks ago, I think it's 1 or 2 weeks ago, the Wall Street Journals published one article and emphasized the United States government should be more clear, more forthcoming to recognize Japanese sovereignties over Diaoyu Island. That caused enormous concerns among some of the Chinese scholars and officials. And also in Tibet, Xinjiang's issues, and China and the United States also conflict each other's. And Xinjiang is the troubled waters, and has been caused concerns among Chinese about the social stabilities. But recent incident that took place in Tiananmen Squares caused tensions between China and the United States. And this is also another example. So how to avoid conflict? is one issue. And I think it's both sides need to think hard how to avoid confrontation. That would be a little bit easy if we can solutions to avoid conflict. Mutual respect. Mutual respect, in other words, China demand United States respect for China's core interests, not only on its peripheries, but also in faraway places. At the same time, China's recognized United States' core interest. But this is something we have to deal with in very constructive ways. And also how to achieve win-win cooperations is also the new issues. Because when we examine China's United States relationship in the past 60 years, and we're going to got some strong impressions. And the two countries from time to time play zero-sum games. But how to transform such a kind of zero-sum games into plus-sum games is tremendous for the two countries to deal with. So for the time being, we're going to see China and the United States relationship face a new challenges in addition to the old issues like Taiwan, like trade, like Tibet, and we used to characterize as three T's, but also we face new conflict, new problems. For examples, in the new areas, for examples in military field. With rapid economic growth in the past years, China's embraced rapid military modernizations, and this caused concerns. And also in the cyberspace securities, and China and the United States have different opinions and different interpretations, different interests. And on the outer space, the two countries also at odds. And the new things also we need to pay attention. And China and the United States used to focus on bilateral issues. But all of a sudden, as China rise to world powers, and the United States and China find the two countries need to cooperate, and also the two countries conflict on multilateral issues. And also the two countries need to deal with the new voices came from both sides, particularly from China's side. You see China's increasing number of the netizens came to jump into the decision makings in China's foreign affairs. And also China's mass media become increasingly vocal. And for example, the Xinhua News Agency recently published one article call for Americanizations, de-Americanizations. And this cause concerns on American side, what that means. And this is the things we need to deal with. New voices, particularly came from China. And also we need to deal with new challenges from so-called third parties, Japan's, Philippines, Vietnam's, and others, third countries from time to time came to intervene, came to influence China's relationship with the United States. So how to deal with the third-party issues is some things China and the United States will need to work together to deal with. Running out of time?
You have 2 more minutes.
2 more minutes.
If you would like.
Yeah. Okay. So there's also one issue that I think the trouble with the bilateral relationship. The issues is the differing or conflicting assessment of the situation in China and in the United States. For examples, many Chinese scholars believe United States is declining, and declining in rapid pace. And at the same time, they believe China's on the rise and will become a superpower like Yan Xutun maintained in 2023. China will become a superpower. The whole world power structures will become polarized. So this is, but Americans on the American side, for example, like Derek Caesars from American Enterprises, and he maintained it's not power transitions taking place right now. China lagged behind the United States in many, many years. No powers rivalries, no contest between two countries. And China need to catch up, need to spend many years to catch up with the United States. So scholars in China, in the United States have a different assessment of the power of the economic, military development in China, in the United States. So the conflict and different assessment will produce different policy options.
I think that's a good place to come back to. I think now we'll move to Professor Liu from the Shanghai Academy of Social Sciences. Professor Liu.
First, thank you for Asan's invitation. And I could not remember how many times I attended such kind of conference. But this is my first time to be in Beijing. Yeah. And I hope this forum could be further developed into other areas and more maybe other cities and Korea and China. And this topic on the major power relationship, or new type of major power relationship, I think is interesting. And mostly I agree Xiaohu's remarks. I just give some of my interpretation on this concept. I agree that this concept is not totally new. And we all know that China and the United States has some problem for at least more than 10 years or decade or even 20 years. Yeah. And both sides try to manage the friction. In the past, we usually say there are some issues we call 3T, like Taiwan, trade, Tibet. Now, Taiwan issue is coming down. Trade issue is not so in the central, and Tibet is not, also not central. But now we have other issues, military, cyber, maritime security. Yeah. So this is a kind of new development. And actually, Xi Jinping put forward this concept. But as a matter of fact, I think before Xi Jinping, Hu Jintao mentioned this concept in the SED talks in 2012. Yeah, 2012. So I just put it, this policy, this development of a concept is consistent of the leadership. It's not purely a new concept. And then we have to look at that concept into different maybe way. On the U.S., in the Sunnyland talks, and the U.S. don't want to use this concept. They use a new model of cooperation. And China persists in use a new type of a power relationship. So what's the difference? I think we may analyze it. For me, I think for China, this is not G2. Yeah, some people say this is a new major power relationship. Is it a G2? And at first, China wants to expand this new power type of relationships, not just focus on China-US, but including China-Russia, China-EU, China-Japan, China-India. But later on, and some people say maybe still we need to focus on China-US, because this is a kind of relation based on the assumption that a new rising power will challenge the established power. So we have to first solve these issues. For the G2, we know this is a kind of bilateral relations above the rest. And for this new type of power relationship, maybe we could interpret it as the Dai Bingguo said as a C2. C2 is also bilateral relationship, but it is bilateral relationship at a multilateral context. So we need to make this distinguish. And for the US, I think they still think China-US relation important, but the common interest limited. The approach for the managing relationship also limited. But for China, we think we need to establish a relationship comprehensive. Without comprehensive relationship, China-US relationship could not be stabilized. So I think this is a different kind of start point. Of course, for China, I think this relationship, I think most reflect China's wishful thinking. And so far, I don't think on the US side, we are totally accept this kind of relationship. But China will do its best to promote, to push forward this concept. And of course, it will take time. Particularly, and I think this issue, this concept is also a part of peaceful rising. Because I said before that in the traditional law of history, the rising power will challenge the established power. So China wants to prove that this kind of law could not be repeated again. So we build a new type of relationship. It's a kind of a reinterpretation of peace rising. So this is the first part, and what I interpreted. Of course, I agree with Xi Jinping's the contents. No confrontation, no competition, and win-win cooperation, mutual respect. But we have to make them more clearly. The second part, I just want to maybe focus on review of the Sunnyland Summit. I think we look at the half-year development. Of course, sometimes I'm pessimistic, but we have to read the issues development objectively. I think July and August, September, there are 3 visits. Yeah, these 3 visits, I think, keep a momentum for pushing forward this bilateral relationship, or called the new type of power relationship. SED, Wang Yang just with DC, and we have almost 4 or 5, or maybe 1 big negotiation plus 4 small groups negotiation. And we have strategic security dialogues, and we have cyber security dialogues. This is the first time. Of course, for the strategic security dialogue, it's the 3rd time. And this year, maybe we will have another round of such kind of talks. SED talks really achieved something. 91 items, a long list for cooperation. Of course, people will sometimes doubt. I sometimes remind my fellows at my institute, we need to make assessment for the previous maybe agreement on those SED talks. Which areas, which item has been materialized, which item not be materialized, why? We need to maybe follow up. Yeah, this is also very important. Maybe sometimes China always pay attention to those symbolic agreement, but we need to be more substantive results. So follow-up implementation more important on those in comparison with these symbolic agreements. So I think SED talks really push forward, and it particularly put cyber attacks. This issue and become hot, and as the Snowden case, and further push forward for those kind of cyber issues. I think both sides have the responsibility, and China, I think, should and it will to take a responsibility to talk about norm. As I know, and in Seoul, just a few days ago or a week ago, they had such kind of a conference on cybersecurity. China become a part of it. Yeah. So China will fully involved in forming a kind of a new form. This is a global commons. There's no and a code of conduct. So we need a code of conduct. Yeah. And also, in the SED, we talk a lot about energy, about the science, about the environment protection. Yeah. So more potential areas will be tapped. Another issue, also very important for China-US relation, BIT talks. Bilateral and investment treaty, yeah. This is very important, yeah. And we had some breakthrough after 9 rounds of talks. Particularly, China asked for pre-establishment national treatment. And we had such kind of agreement that China could have that kind of status. So we will continue talks maybe with 1 or 2 years. I think we could finalize for the BIT. If BIT could be finalized, I think it will be paved the way for future China join the TPP. Yeah. And it will create a kind of pressure for China opening society, opening market to the outside. And the Chinese economic structure, its foreign investment structure will be more qualified. The qualification will be more greater. Yeah. So I think it will be good, yeah, for not just the Sino-American relations, but also for Chinese economy, for China's reform. Yeah.
So, Professor Liu, I think we'll come back to the other elements that you were going to discuss and come to...
I just briefly touch upon. I will not go deeply. And August, defense ministers talks, Taiwan visit. Also, I think this is quite fruitful. They particularly, I think, within they call 5 agreement, 5 items. I just mentioned most important that for the pre-notification for the military maneuvering, yeah, that is very important for the strategic trust building measures, and also for the maybe high-level officers visit for the next year, and about RIMPAC's 2014 China's PAA we join, yeah, and then they will talk about the code of conduct on the air, in the sea. So I think a lot of agreements, and then Wang Yi's visit. I think I will do not go detail about Wang Yi's visit and his speech at Brookings, and I think you all know that, but he really interpret, analyze the contents of this new type of relationships. Then, and finally, I just say there's a lot of challenges and still a lot of difficulties and ahead of us. We have to deal with, yeah. On the U.S. side, rebalancing, yeah, to Asia, and actually, and we hope that in the Obama's second terms, U.S. could slow down this process of rebalancing. But actually, U.S. continue this kind of rebalancing and has further want to consolidate its military relation, like with the Philippines, with Japan, and particularly on those hot issues, on the maritime security issues. I think this is put China on some alert. I think this is some kind of alert, and the point we have to make take attention to that. Another issue I think is very important for China, U.S. should work together, not just North Korea. I just think North Korea issue will remain for long times. Yeah, we could not resolve North Korean nuclear issue. About regional economic integration. In the past,
Professor Liu, I think we'll come back to North Korea in the second round. There are some specific questions. I really would
we
like
could have a Q&A on Korea. Yes. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I just finish my presentation. For the, I think economic integration is very important because this now in the East Asia is quite divided. TPP and 10+3, and the U.S. want to upgrade ES. I think we need to pay attention to this regional cooperation. If this kind of divided economic relation will continue, I think it's not good for the stability of China-U.S. relation. Finally, it's about these things Xiaohu has mentioned, Xinjiang, Tibet, I also put another issue, Hong Kong issue. Yeah. Because the Hong Kong issue will come out sooner or later, because with some domestic issues, as they choose the new chief executive, what's the process? So how China, US could have some, could manage this issue is also very important for the stability or new type of power relationships. And as Wang Yi said, this new power, new type of power relationship, the starting point is in the Asia Pacific. So Korean issue, Afghanistan issue, the 2 points. Yeah. And for the Korean issue, I think China will keep its promise for denuclearization, will not tolerate on this issue. So as North Korea, as this new leader, will not take any substantive measures, China will keep its promise for implementing all UN sanction regulation. And also China want to go back to six-party talks. Yesterday we talked about six-party talks. We know South Korea, US on the one side, China on the other side, they will have difference. Why we should have talks for talks? It's meaningless. But China has such kind of idiom. If there are two big problems are facing you, you need to solve the issue, maybe the light one. So in comparison with the North Korea continue its denuclearization, HEU program, and we tolerate, if we have a meaningful-less or resultless talks, I think if we take some procedures for the talks, at least it will, to a certain extent, to control the development of nuclearization.
You're well over your time. Chris Johnson, please, from
Okay.
CSIS. Thank you.
Thanks. In the interest of time, I'll try to truncate my remarks a little bit. I think, as the two previous speakers have noted, one of the challenges with this new concept of the new style of major country relations is the fact that it is a high-sounding and great concept, but execution obviously has been poor up until now. And I think part of this is because both sides are trying to figure out what it means. This was especially true for Washington, as Professor Chung indicated. Of course, the overall concept is absolutely correct. We're trying to find a way to avoid the bad instances of the past in which a sort of rising power and established power meet on the world stage and often ends up in conflict. In fact, the historical record is not very encouraging in terms of finding episodes where that was able to be avoided. So as a concept, of course, it makes abundant sense, and both sides, I think, fundamentally recognize that. But I think it's fair to say that we're struggling in terms of how to implement it, and why is that the case? I think the main reason is it's very hard. It's very hard to be able to implement something along these lines. Sino-US relations, of course, were founded on the common Soviet threat. That is now no longer the case. And I think as China's growing power and global influence have increased, it means really that in a lot of ways the entire cadence of the way the relationship is structured and the mechanisms by which we interact with each other really do have to fundamentally change. And as Foreign Minister Han was saying in his remarks this morning, it's not clear that either side necessarily wants to do that just at this particular case. I think to understand also why this is so challenging at this stage, we really have to dial back to the immediate post-global financial crisis period, in which you could argue that China's confidence, as some would say hubris or assertiveness, has just risen dramatically. At the same time, the U.S. was struggling and facing pervasive insecurity, both in terms of the weakness of our own economy and what comes with that, but also the persistent dysfunction of our government system, as we've all been discussing here over the last couple of days. So I think it created a situation where, if you look at it as a scale, China was sort of up here and the U.S. was struggling down here, and that disequilibrium makes the bilateral relationship more challenging, and I think we saw several instances of that with the launch of the rebalance, with China's fairly robust behavior in the South and East China Seas, and the tensions that have generated because of that. But Jane, you asked us to talk about what positively has happened since Wang Jise and Ken wrote their piece. And so, is there any hope to fix this problem? I think absolutely. That's my sense. I can see a period 3 to 5 years probably down the track where we can reestablish a new equilibrium. And I think this is based on several factors. The first is that the U.S. confidence is growing again. The economy, of course, is doing better. We have the shale gas and oil revolution in the United States. And I think it's also very significant, of course, that China always tends to overperceive or overread these developments. So I think a lot of folks here are beginning to look at this as, oh, the U.S. is suddenly back on an upward track. I'm interested in Professor Liu's comments, but my sense is that I hear a lot fewer Chinese voices now talking about the inevitable decline of the United States. I think that narrative has decreased substantially here. So the U.S. is upticking a little bit. Likewise, I think some of the shine or sheen, if you will, of China's sort of narrative after the global financial crisis that we have found a third way in terms of our economic development and so on that is the right way to go going forward. A lot of that shine is starting to come off as the gears of the economy here have been grinding. They have been struggling to find a way forward, and I think the leadership is understanding, as we've just seen over the last couple of days with the close of the third plenary session, that these are very difficult reforms that they're confronting, and will be a very, very challenging process going forward, and therefore they need a benign and stable external environment as they continue to work on this. So you can see a situation where China comes down off of that high a little bit and the U.S. gets on an upswing and we can get ourselves to a new equilibrium point. I think the tricky part is how do we get from here to there, because I do think it will take 3 to 5 years without having a major disruption in the relationship. And I think there's several points, again, to be optimistic about. The first and foremost, I think, is that because of these internal challenges that China is facing right now, this provides the United States with an opportunity to strengthen relations. You might even say some leverage, if you will, in the bilateral relationship. And I don't mean leverage from a competitive point of view, I mean it from a cooperative point of view. And the emphasis point there would be on reassuring the Chinese, number one, that we want to see them successfully get through these challenges that they're facing, and we want to be helpful in that process and trying to do what we can from our side to assist the Chinese in that. Likewise, I think we may be able to ask China for some more assistance on some of these areas we've been discussing over the past few days for cooperation, especially on the North Korean nuclear issue. Similarly, I think China is demonstrating in its approach to its regional neighbors a much more nuanced and adroit policy since the new leadership team has come in. A lot of the challenges that we were facing in the last few years, China seems to be very clearly signaling now a reorientation, a more positive orientation of its approach toward the regional countries. Obviously, issues with Japan persist and with the Philippines persist, but I think it's indisputable that the messaging coming out of the new leadership team is a different approach there. And to be frank, I think the United States has effectively been taking advantage over the last couple of years of China's, to use football terminology, own goals in South China Sea in particular, but elsewhere. And so if China is able to successfully reorient its policy more like what it looked like in the late 1990s, this is going to put pressure on the United States to step up its game as well. You can't just rely on China shooting itself in the foot in the region. We also have to take into account their more sophisticated approach. And I think that lends itself toward cooperation, frankly, between the two sides, and that will be significant. In terms of how might this stay on the right track, or what are the threats to getting ourselves through this 3 to 5 year period, we've talked a lot so far in the panel about the maritime security issues, about cybersecurity and so on. My own view is that those challenges are going to persist. I mean, there's a cooperative element to U.S.-China relations, and there's a competitive element to U.S.-China relations. Our goal with both of these issues, because they are so challenging and knotty, is that we just have to aim for stability in those key areas and to have open dialogue between the two sides, but to the degree that we're able, try to shelve them in the bilateral relationship and not let them dominate the bilateral relationship. I'm actually much more focused on the economic bilateral relationship. That one, to me, is both the chief positive development that can help stabilize things in this 3 to 5 year period, but also a major risk if we don't get it right. On the positive side, as President Xi said when he came and visited the United States as vice president in February of last year, the economic relationship has always been the ballast and the propeller of Sino-US relations. And I think if we take an honest assessment, it's fair to say that it has always been one of the key elements, frankly, that helps us avoid conflict in the relationship, a shock absorber for periods of heavy bilateral tension in the relationship. And I expect that process to continue. As Professor Liu was saying, we have seen some interesting indications from China about their willingness to consider moving forward with a bilateral investment treaty with the United States, perhaps showing greater interest in participating in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And I think the U.S. side needs to understand fundamentally the root of why China is doing that. My own sense is that these things, I think we're seeing a lot of talk coming out of China in the last few weeks. They are beginning again to look at the pattern that they adopted when they joined the WTO in the late 1990s, and that is to use an external pressure or external tool, if you will, to do the difficult things domestically that they know they need to do, but in terms of the domestic political context can't do. And so I think the bilateral investment treaty and TPP both serve to fit that function. In terms of the risks in the bilateral economic relationship, I disagree somewhat with Professor Liu. I think trade is still a major issue in the bilateral relationship, but it's trade from a different perspective than it has been historically. 3 to 5 years ago, the main bone of contention in the relationship, arguably, certainly from the U.S. business community's point of view, was renminbi valuation. Now I think the issue is much more about the ability by both sides, companies from both sides, to be able to invest in each other's economy on what they perceive as a level playing field. Obviously, China has its major concerns about its ability for its firms to invest in the United States. U.S. firms have their issues with regard to the playing field here, and frankly, that situation seems to have been growing in concern with some of these pricing and regulatory and other investigations that we've seen here in China that have sort of disproportionately targeted Western multinational corporations in the last several months. So there's a real danger here that we could cause this fundamental stabilizer in the relationship to become much more difficult. I think the way ahead on that is to continue these talks. I used to be involved in the strategic and economic dialogue talks. I'm a big fan, but I believe it's become too messy. It's like a carnival these days. You decamp half of the U.S. government or half of the Chinese government to the other capital. You do have 91 agreements, but what do they really produce in terms of practical implementation? I think we need a much more high-level and, frankly, probably very private dialogue between the two sides on the economic relationship to be able to really tackle these challenging issues we're facing. I think with that, I'll stop there and move along. Thanks.
Professor Chu,
Yes.
over to you.
Yes, thank you, Jane. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's quite an honor to be part of this panel, and it's been an amazing days, I say, starting yesterday, and I'd like to thank and express my sincere gratitude to Dr. Ham and Asan and honorary chairman of Chung Mung-jun. Yes, as a student of Chinese foreign policy of the past 23 years, but whenever I come to occasion like this, it still makes me humble and really makes me to review and reflect on my own studies and really been quite inspiring and enlightening to my studies. So I thank Asan again. Yes, today we're supposed to talk about U.S.-China relations here, and as you can see in the panel description, and the last sentence goes like, can Chinese-American leaders articulate a new model of relations? And I guess from a Korean perspective, I guess I like to rephrase the question here. How are China and the United States are going to articulate this egg of new model of relations in East Asian basket here? And whenever I hear, whenever I follow the U.S. and China relations here and hear the American perspective and Chinese perspective on the same topic, it always reminds me of a song by the Beatles, Say Goodbye, Say Hello. You say goodbye, I say hello. I say yes, you say no. It doesn't seem like they're going in the same direction at all. And so I wonder, and people have been talking about, how China and the United States are, they're sleeping in the same bed, but they're having a different dream. But I say, they haven't they haven't tied a knot yet. But we were talking about, same bed and different dream here. So are they going to be able to tie the knot here? Or, if they're going to tie the knot, how are they going to get off on the right foot? But so far, it looks like, they've been getting off on the wrong foot. And just like Jane just pointed out, you just briefly went over Kenneth Lieberthal and Wang Jisu's, strategic distrust here. And I've also borrowed some citations from the booklet here. But before I go into details about, the distrust aspect of the relationship, I don't know in the long term whether we're going to see power transition or the negative consequences of what the realists would like to claim, or just like the Channing line from the famous movie called Mad Max, 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. I don't know if that could be a foregone consequences of the relationship here, but I don't think we should be that pessimistic, although there's some well-founded distrust between the two countries here. My talking points will follow as such. Will China and the United States ever find a ground where they can converge their interest in the relationship here? If so, where they can find it, we'll be able to see this happening in our lifetime. Or just like the Chinese would like to claim and insist that will common interests greater than conflict be the answer in tying the relationship together? Or but unfortunately, their distrust is deeply rooted and becoming way too overwhelming, even for the regional players to embrace. It is quite evident in their outlook of the regional order, especially East Asia, and I'd like to start on this particular notion. I'd like to start from the perspectives that were presented once by former Secretary of the State Hillary Clinton when she said the United States can, must, and will lead in this new century. It was a famous quote when she delivered a speech at the Council on Foreign Relations in Washington, D.C. on September 8th, 2010. But, it looks like, the United States and China are looking ahead together regarding the regional order of East Asia, but I think China also has some different perspective here when Wen Jiabao also said back in year 2004, in describing China's position to the East Asian regional affairs, the policy of hiding one's talents and biding one's time, 韬光养晦, must remain in operation at least for another 100 years. So here, supposedly Wen Jiabao said this at the year 2004 conference of Chinese ambassadors that was held in Beijing. So obviously here, the United States wants to consolidate its primacy and leadership in the region for the next 100 years, whereas China still wants to hide its talents and bide its time for the next 100 years. So obviously there's a big discrepancy in their position here. So where does the seed of this trust comes from? I would say we can look at it from a historical perspective, and the seed of trust was really sought at the outset of the Cold War in the early 50s and late 40s. Obviously, China has encirclement phobia historically, and it was first taken by the United States' move in building the alliance system in East Asia following the Korean War. And I think the second seed comes from the USSR's attempt to encircle China in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, starting with its support and engagement in the Vietnam War and its military bases in Mongolia and invasion of Afghanistan in 1979. And the third seed comes from now, the United States again. It's starting with unsuccessful. It starts with the United States seemingly unsuccessful expedition to Central Asia, and now with this proclaimed strategic rebalancing strategy with its allies in the region. So there's the historical perspective here. So no wonder, China has been really critical and suspicious of the United States' intention of rebalancing or pivot to Asia and view it as encirclement strategy of the United States. But the current state of distrust was well laid out by Wang Jisoo and Kenneth Lieberthal, and I'm sure very much of the audience must have read this beautiful piece. So I'm not going to go over this in detail. But with regards to the United States and China's outlook on regional order down the road, I've laid out a table when I was asked to submit my talking points, so I thought everybody was going to be able to share my table here, but unfortunately not. But so I'm just going to go briefly over what I have laid out in the table here. For instance, when it comes to regional order of East Asia, I think that there's a fundamental difference in the goal between China and the United States. Obviously, China wants to achieve and realize common development and build a harmonious world, whereas the United States wants to preserve its primacy and leadership, while this primacy and leadership and the order should be based on value sharing with the member countries here, regional countries. And the values pursued by China is quite in contrast with the United States too. China has been, claiming that the value that should be pursued in the region are peace, development, cooperation, and China is really confident in these values because the logic goes, peace guarantees development. Peace is a precondition to the development, and development can guarantee peace. Whereas the United States, we all know that the values that the United States pursue in its foreign policy is really laid in democracy, freedom, and market economy. And market economy to function as it is supposed to be, then democracy and freedom should be guaranteed. And the order system, when it comes to order system, obviously China wants to build a system on cooperation based on multilateralism, whereas the United States would like to pursue multilateralism, as pointed out and emphasized by the Obama administration, but based on bilateralism. So meaning that the alliance structure should be the basis of the multilateralism here. And the framework of the regional order, China has been persistent with its saying that open regionalism should be the framework of the regional order, whereas the United States says alliance-based regionalism should be the framework. The principles, obviously there's a list of principles that we can go on with the Chinese regional order perspective, but the main three perspectives of the principles include respect of diversity and peaceful coexistence and democracy of international relations. The United States, obviously the principle lies in shared value, commitment, and international law and norms. The gravity of the order on this particular question, the United States and China also share different perspectives. China claims that the gravity, the center of the order should lie in ASEAN, Southeast Asia, whereas the United States see it more appropriate to be with its allies. And the membership of the regional order should be, according to China, should be inclusive, meaning that it should be based on open regionalism, so everybody's welcome to join in if they want to. Everybody's welcome here. Whereas the United States rather wants to be really kind of picky here with its selection of the membership, because first the eligibility of the members should be able to share the values of the values that the United States pursue in this region, and and the norms. The source of stability of the regional order, according to Chinese claim, should lie in common interest and new security concept. Whereas the United States think that the source of stability can come from the U.S. leadership and primacy and its positive influence over the international affairs in the region. My conclusion is, I guess China and the United States will find it really more difficult to build a common ground where they can really converge their views and perspectives regarding the East Asian regional order, unless the seed of distrust is really completely exhumed. I guess China has been really persistent with its claim and that the regional order should be, or the cooperative relationship should be built based on common interests. But I don't think that could be the answer. But what if we don't share common interests? Then I guess the obvious answer is what we are witnessing in Southeast Asia or Northeast Asia too. And so interest out of the boundary really estrange them as well as China's relationship with other regional countries. But I'm not going to be.
I think we can come back to those questions in the discussion. You've made some very good points. I'd just like to get the two discussions going, and then we'll come back and ask the Chinese participants to discuss your points.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Dr. Gong.
Okay. Thank you, Jen. It's my great honor to be here. And these sessions, we are talking about the Sino-US relations. I think it's the most important bilateral relations in the world. But to speak frankly, every time when I was thinking about the Sino-US relations, there are several words. In Chinese, it is 或敌或友, 可敌可友, 亦敌亦友. That means maybe we are enemies, maybe we are friends. We can be friends, we can be enemy. We are enemy as well as friends. So I think now we are talking about, today we are talking about the new model of major countries' relations. So I still think the mutual trust is the most important things. I really want to say something about the Korean Peninsula. Since my personal view is that now there is still a window of opportunity. There are three reasons. The first reason is that I think you can find that recently all the countries, I mean in the Northeast Asia, we all changed our leaders, all the second terms, and it is a very good chance for all the countries to review and change our policies. It also seems that the young leaders in North Korea also maybe want to change something. The second reason is that I found that recently, United States President Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, in the second term, they all improved relations with North Korea. So maybe I think President Obama also were willing to change some things. Maybe he will find North Korea nuclear issue is a bad models, maybe can improve the relations. The third reason is that today we have quite a lot of distinguished professors. We are talking about we should to share the common interests. We are and also we can find a lot of problems in this region. I think that for Sino-US relations, if we are looking back to the Asia-Pacific, you can find the South China Sea, East China Sea, such a lot of tough and difficult issues. But if we are looking at the issues in Korean Peninsula, we can find we share a lot of common interests. Stability and peace and no nuclear weapons. So, but the problem is still here. Why? It seems there is less progress. I think now the problem is that we still think the key, I mean the United States and China, we still think the key is on the other's hand. We still think now it's a time for the others to contribute a lot. And we also have a lot of misunderstanding here. In this today's keynote speech, Professor Han also mentioned that some people will think that maybe China used North Korean nuclear issues just like a car. And it also reminded me about the Taiwan issues. It also, some people in China will also think that Taiwan issues is a card of United States. The policy for United States is 不战, 不和, 不统, 不独. No war, no peace, no unification, no independent. And as for issues on Korean Peninsula, some people will think China's policy is also 不战, 不和, 不统, 不乱. That also means no war, no nuclear weapons, no unifications, no instability. So I think that my personal view is that now it's still time for China and the United States. We should to list, rethinking, and reorder our common interests. Yes, I said we share common interests, but how about the list of the common interests? And also, we still to share the regional interests instead of our national interests in times. So I like one of the Chinese words is 名舍得. That means sometimes you should to give up or lose something, then you can get more. And I think that now, to President Obama and President Xi, we are find the name is O and X, but I don't think it's the time for Ox. And I think that we should to win-win corporations. So I really like the word stakeholder instead of G2. I think we should to share a lot of common interests and reorder all these interests. And that means we will not only help the others, but also help ourselves. And the second thinking about the Sino-US relation is also, Professor Han today also mentioned about security dilemma. And in my personal view is that in this regional, maybe we can deal all these issues in 3 levels. In Chinese is 同盟防止问题, 六方解决问题, 中美管控问题. That means we use the alliance to prevent the problems. We use 6-party talks to resolve issues. And we use Sino-US relations corporations to manage the issues. So the very quickly simple example is that North Korean nuclear issues. In my mind is that North Korea is a younger brother of China. South Korea is a younger brother of the United States. So we both to look after our younger brothers. We use alliance to prevent something. But if we can't prevent something, that means North Korea attacks nuclear weapons again. So now we should to come back to 6-party talks to just really to resolve something. But if 6-party talks also don't work, so why not China and the United States cooperation quite well to manage these issues. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ha, the journalist editor's
Right.
perspective.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm really greatly honored to be here, and especially very thrilled to give some kind of presentation in front of my undergraduate advisor, Mr. Ham Jae-bong. It seems like I'm tested by him. And as a journalist, I usually sitting on the back row of that seat and writing down what experts or professors are talking about and make it an article. But this time I'm giving my perspective or my opinion about this. So I'm really, really thrilled to do this. Let me start with some kind of joke which was very popular in South Korean community. I don't know whether this can be understood by my Chinese friends or Japanese friends or American friends. There are 3 biggest mysteries in South Korea. One is what is the real meaning of creative economy by Madam President Park Geun-hye. And the second one is New Politics by An Cheol-soo. An Cheol-soo is a reform-minded politician who belongs to nowhere. And the third one is what is the real mind of Kim Jong-un, North Korean leader? That's the 3 biggest mysteries in South Korea. South Korean people are thinking about. But I think I must add this, new model of major country relations between China and United States to my fourth mystery. I think I'm going to tackle down this issue anyway. So according to the address by Mr. Wang Yi, it's pretty clear cut, and Professor Chung already mentioned about the no conflict or no confrontation and mutual respect, and the third one is win-win cooperation. It sounds very clear, but I don't think American side is fully accept this notion. I don't know why they don't accept it, but maybe it has related to some kind of a destiny that the great powers must decline at some point, right? So maybe Chinese thinking about Americans are already hitting the highest point, and it's always on the decline, and the China is keep growing. So at some point, China can surpass or overtake the supremacy in global order. So that's why I think American is a little bit reluctant to take this concept as the co-author or co-host of this opinion. And I think this notion might be based on, it is true. It's proven by history that the Roman Empire already fell down, and the invincible Armada of Spain also did the same thing, followed the same path, and the demise of Qing Dynasty, which was one of the biggest and strongest power in world history, also declined, and Great Britain, of Empire of No Sunset, also took the same path. And that's my observation about the two countries taking on this issue. But from the South Korean point of view, I think Chinese assertion to have a new model of relations can be interpreted as a declaration for new world order, or at least it's a declaration for new regional order, which South Korea belongs to. Korea belongs to East Asia and Asia Pacific. But if they decided this order should be the next decade, South Korea will be greatly affected by this new regional or world order. So if this new type of relations becomes a reality, it's pretty worrisome, and South Koreans must have some kind of concern. And that is quite true. According to Mr. Wang's statement, they said, Mr. Wang said, they were going to use this scheme to Asia Pacific region. And his term was, it's a testing ground. So they want to test this kind of new world order to Asia Pacific region. So we must, naturally, South Korea must be worried about this one. And I don't know whether Chinese side fully explained the content of this new relations to to Korean or Japanese friend. So without the consent from two players, we are also the stakeholders of this region. So without the consent of these two countries, maybe it's really hard to make this new order real. So I think we have very, very painful history which happened in 1894. One was a Sino-Japanese War, and 1905, it was Russo-Japanese War. And as a result of this, there was agreement which called Taft-Gatra Agreement, and which made Korean as Japanese protectorate, and also U.S. has a right to colonize Philippines. So it's kind of a collusion, and some Korean people believe we are betrayed by a superpower at that time. That was only a century ago. So I think it's premature to say this is kind of, it's too premature to worry about this kind of thing happen in the near future. But still, in the sentiment of South Koreans, we're still thinking about if two major countries decide our fate against our at the cost of our national interest, that cannot be accepted for South Korean point of view. So yes, I'm a little bit too pessimistic about this, and my Chinese colleagues and U.S. colleagues also mentioned about the bright side of the whole notion, but we have every reason to worry about this one. And I think if Korea understand, if we can be benefited by this new regional order, maybe we have all the reason to support this. But at this time, it's too vague and too hazy. So maybe we have to understand what this new type of relations really wants to take shape. So after that, maybe we can decide whether we will fully support this or not. Okay.
I think you raised a very good starting point together with Professor Chu, and we can put it to our two Chinese colleagues. And maybe this is too brutal a summation, but for our discussion, to start our discussion, perhaps we can take something from Professor Chu's table and ask Professor Chung and Professor Liu, is the American alliance system, the alliances with Japan and South Korea, is that compatible in the medium to longer term with China's view of the cooperative relationship that you see in the great power relationship?
It's wonderful questions. So also, if my answer probably is a little bit provocative.
Good.
And you see, the United States form we call the hub and spoke alliance systems. Basically, this system was designed to contain so-called the communist expansions. China is one, Soviet Union was one, Vietnam's and North Korea's. That's the old stories. But with the end of the Cold War, the United States continued to build, strengthen this kind of alliance systems. And recently, after the United States announced rebalance strategies in 2009, and these strategies also was designed to strengthen the traditional allies and also build strong relationship with new partners. That's Chinese has reason to ask is what the purpose for the strengthening of military alliances. And I personally like to see these issues in much broader and strategic pictures. You see China is on the rise, and China becomes, in some areas, become increasingly confident, sometimes overconfident. And for some countries, Chinese policies is quite assertive. And so the countries in these regions include some Chinese neighbor countries and also the United States believe it's time to do something to prepare one country from dominant the Asian Pacific. That's the old concept we call balanced powers. So it's, my concerns, such kind of traditional old concept may work behind the United States rebalance strategies. And as core of rebalance strategies, the alliance systems is something, and I think it's play a very important instrumental roles to hedge. I hate to say it contains hedge against the future's China's dominance in these regions.
Professor Liu, what's your take on the compatibility between the United States alliances with Japan and South Korea and China's goals?
Alliance structure, I think, is a legacy of the Second World War. So I don't totally oppose that kind of alliance. And in the Cold War years, and it really did some positive function for the balance between the former Soviet Union and the US side. Yeah. And after the Cold War, and I think still they could have some good effects, positive effects, like balance North Korea. But as this alliance, if further consolidated just for the purpose of targeting China rising, and why ask China doing more on North Korea or other issues? So there will have some contradiction. So, which I think the U.S. need to keep a balance. The relation with China, the relation with allies. If they put these things always in a contradictory way, I don't think it will be good for the stability of the East Asia.
Does anybody else want to add to that particular question, or can we move on to a particular question that I have in mind about North Korea? Chris, you mentioned that you thought the United States can ask China for more cooperation on North Korea. Yet I think that many people in Washington think that China and the United States are not quite on the same page as was thought after Sunnyland on North Korea. What more can the United States ask of China, and why aren't they on the same page?
Sorry, I dropped my mic there. I think, first of all, on the issue of whether or not we're on the same page, I think it was unrealistic to believe that we would be on the same page at the beginning, and I think there was too much euphoria coming out of the initial turn, if you will, in Chinese policy toward North Korea. At the end of the day, their ultimate goals and ours are not entirely aligned.
Can you say how they're not aligned?
How they're not aligned? Well, I mean, for example, I think ultimately the U.S. would like to, certainly we have to resolve the nuclear problem. I think in the long range, there's a sensibility on the U.S. side that we would like to see progressive change inside North Korea at some point. And of course, China's policy is always primarily devoted towards stability. So there's that kind of fundamental, very fundamental dissonance between the two sides.
I notice you're avoiding the phrase regime change.
Well, because that's not our policy. So I try to be consistent. Obviously, I don't represent the U.S. government, but obviously, we would like to see more opening within North Korea. On your broader question about what we might seek from the Chinese, my own view is it's all in the matter of tone. In a lot of these meetings, there's a tendency, I think, to go to the Chinese side with a list of issues, a list of demands, if you will, that we would like to see the Chinese implement. I think it has to be more of a discussion. And as I mentioned on the bilateral economic relationship, I think it has to be a very high level and a very private and quiet discussion, given the sensitivity of the issues for both countries.
But what specifically do you think the United States should be asking Beijing for on North Korea? What are some of the specifics? I mean, Wu Daiwei was just there in Washington. Presumably he learned something, and then he went to North Korea. So what is in the mix that the United States wants?
I think
and thinks China is capable of carrying out.
Right. Well, I think actually in that regard, probably what we're looking for from the Chinese side is more of the same. In other words, more willingness on China's part to demonstrate its willingness to put pressure on the regime economically in terms of their bilateral relationship, and just to continue to have a more balanced policy from China. I mean, this has been the advantage, frankly, of the Xi Jinping administration's differing perspective on the North Korea issue. You can argue, certainly during the Chonan sinking period and the shelling of Yopingdo Island and so on, China was completely to the other side in terms of supporting North Korea. Now we've seen them come much more back to the center, and I think the U.S. wants to support and encourage that. Also, I think what we would like to see, obviously, is some more insight from the Chinese side with regard to the stability situation within North Korea. Nobody has a better perspective. Obviously, China's perspective is not 100%, but they certainly have a better perspective than we do. So just that kind of broader information sharing between the two sides would be very, very helpful as well. And then obviously long term, again, have to be done very privately, but we would like to see some discussion about possible collapse scenario contingency planning at some point or another.
What do you mean by that?
So in the event of a North Korean collapse internally, what would the two sides do? What would be the ground rules for intervening? How would we sort that out? Obviously, it's an extremely sensitive issue between the two sides.
Has there been any initial discussion on that ever in the last couple of years?
Not that I'm aware of, but I wouldn't know.
Two Chinese colleagues, Dr. Chung and Professor Liu, do you think it's realistic to ask the Chinese to do more, as Chris is suggesting?
I think since Wu Dawe's Washington visit and talk with Davis and send to Pyongyang, China is doing its best and to encourage North Korea come back to the six-party talks. And of course, we think that before the resumption of the six-party talks, North Korea need to take some pre-steps. Yeah, at least some announcement for the September 19th the joint statements. They should recommit, to the denuclearization. Yeah, but still, I think there's some gap between North Korea's thinking and U.S. South Korea demand. Yeah. So what China do is try to bridge that gap. And if there's no such kind of talks, we don't have talks for 5 years. If no more talks, I think they will accelerate a kind of nuclearization. More tests, more missile firing. This is more worrisome for the situation. So we need to come back first. Yeah, of course, with some condition. But then we could continue give some collective pressure on North Korea. This is just like a cat. The cat don't want to move into the cage. We have to induce them gradually into cage. Then we try to contain them. So this is a kind of different approaches.
Yes, also, so I'd like to say is for North Korea's nuclear issues, and the international community should take as a collective responsibility to deal with. China just could not take sole responsibility to persuade this country to back off. Certainly, China's government has more leverages over these countries, no doubt about it. And about how far China goes, I think it's a number of things we need to take into considerations. Number one, China does not want to transform its traditional friendly relationship with DPRK into antagonistic relationship. Turns DPRK as China's enemy. And secondly, I think it's China's believe it will take time to seize how the international community's sanctions imposed by the United Nations Security Council take time to see the result and the effect, and also as Chris mentioned, whether or not China and the United States could share intelligence about the situation inside. I think we have not reached the point yet, but I think it's among the senior leaders there's some exchange of informations, but we have to take time to set up a regular mechanism to exchange views, informations, and first contingency plans is already taking place within the academic communities. But I doubt China would be willing to discuss issues on the one-point track because it's too sensitive, too offensive, and will be sabotage the whole efforts China made to persuade DPRK to back to the six-party talk tables. And I think I'm going to stop here.
If I could just ask, you say that we need to wait to see the effects of the United Nations sanctions, but as everybody waits, North Korea keeps moving along, barreling along in developing its operational capacity and its capacity to miniaturize a weapon. Isn't waiting rather more dangerous?
I think it's, on one hand, I like to say we need to take time to see the result of the international pressures. And we see the United Nations Security Council's passed false resolutions imposing economic sanctions. And such a kind of economic sanctions actually, I think, cost DPRK's legs and arms in 5 years period of time, in 10 years period of time. On the other hand, as I said, China does not sit there and waiting things to happen in a very natural way. As a matter of fact, in the past 1 year, China has taken more steps to let Pyongyang to feel the pressures, feel the pains. And the problem is the United States and ROK and some other countries appreciate China's efforts and take the notice of China's more steps, but they believe China's efforts is not enough. And that's the point of dispute. China thinks to take forceful and sweeping measures to send a strong message and let Pyongyang to feel the pressures. And China wait to see the results and make assessment. But Washington is more eager to see China to take more actions. That's the different
Maybe there's
positions,
a
ideas.
difference of perception in
Yeah,
how far
perception.
along North Korea is in
Yes.
developing its weapons. Maybe China is not as worried as the United States in the speed at which the North Koreans are getting very close to operationalization of their weapons.
That's right.
So I think with that we should open the floor. I'm going to take the woman right there.
15 minutes.
Thank you. Just now, the panelists had a very interesting discussion about what is new in the new model. Well, if we look at the past, you may find actually in Jiang Zemin's era, well, he had the idea of partnership. And in Hu Jintao's era, he had the idea of harmonious world. So it seems to me everybody has a thing, right? So then I think maybe this new model is Xi Jinping's thing. So, but what I really cares is that, what is Obama's thing? Because it's now his second term, and he's now faced with the re-election pressure again. And also, it's time for him to consider his historical legacy. So, under the framework of rebalancing, I think I'd like to maybe the American professor to tell me, what is his thing under this framework of rebalancing.
Chris?
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, does he have a thing? That's a question. I mean, I think the administration strategy has been clear. We want a cooperative relationship with China, and we also want to provide reassurance to others in the region, allies and friends, about China's increasing power and influence in the system. So that all remains the same. I think in terms of looking at how the president may want to address these issues going forward, an opportunity was certainly created at the Sunnyland Summit, right? A very unique discussion between the two leaders, and now there needs to be a Chinese version of the Sunnyland Summit. We need to have something here to follow up on that, and that will give the president the opportunity, I think, to frame, the direction of the relationship going forward. He has a unique opportunity, I think, with President Xi in this instance. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, my feeling is because of the challenges China is facing domestically with its economic transformation and so on, they're very desirous of a smooth and stable relationship with the U.S. I think President Xi, Foreign Minister Wang, everyone has been signaling this very, very clearly. So then I think what we need to see from the U.S. side is a willingness to grab that opportunity and move forward cooperatively together.
Please.
Thank you. Comments. I think it's a consensus of two countries, U.S. China, to have a new type of relationship. And it's a conventionalism is like that's a Chinese proposal. It's true. It's not so true. Yes, Xi Jinping proposed early last year. But for years, President Obama, Secretary Clinton proposed non-zero-sum game relation with China. So it's a kind of new type of relations compared with history. So I think it's rather consensus between two leadership government for years to have that kind of new type of relations. But the two countries do have different expectations on the relationship. And for Chinese, it emphasizes avoiding confrontation between major powers as a history had a lot of time. For US, it emphasizes greater, more cooperation, including common actions, position on Korea, Syria, Iran, Snowden, and many others. So there's a certain degree of disappointment of U.S. embassy here. And the U.S. government, White House State Department, for a year when two sides agree on the relation, there's a little common action, or not strong enough, because there's a different emphasizing area. And talking about Wang Ji's can live so the article, lack of strategic trust. No, Jen, you published an article in your time about that. I think, yes, it's true two countries do not have political trust because different regime system. But the two countries over the 4 decades do have some strategic trust about each other's intention. And the trust is political as well as a cultural issue. I think two leadership, two governments, two countries, since later year Mao Zedong, Zhou Enlai, Nixon, Kissinger, do have some personal trust towards each other as a top level, as a secretary, minister level, as a working level, assistant secretary level, bureau chief level. And academics like Jonathan and I, we trusted each other for more than 20 years because we know that each other a good person, good human beings, honest. Even political system values are different. So it's not true that U.S. China do not have any trust. They do have some trust. Otherwise, why Obama, Xi Jinping had 2 days, 8 hours dialogue, meetings in California in June, if they did not trust each other at all. Next important point, there's a couple of times mentioned about the Taoguang Yanhui, like hiding something. And conventionalism in China, in the whole world for past decades, say this is #1 Chinese foreign policy thinking strategy. And Deng Xiaoping words are challenging this. Because if you check official publication, Deng Xiaoping never said so. Never said Taoguang Yanhui in 20 or 16 characters. You can check the 3 volume of Deng Xiaoping works or any official publication for decades. And the Chinese leaders never use that word. It's never appeared at the People's Congress annual meeting, Prime Minister report, never appeared at the Party Congress documents in years, never in the Party Secretary, President, the Prime Minister, Foreign Minister official speech. So I teach Chinese foreign strategic policy for more than decades. I wrote a whole book on Chinese foreign strategy. I read 6 Chinese newspapers every day in 20 years. I never see it. So convinced with we should think seriously about whether this is a Chinese major principle. Thank you.
Great point. I'm being told we've got 5 minutes. So Jonathan, and then over there, and then there.
Thank you. I'll try to be as brief as possible. This discussion reminds me very, very much of the proverbial tale of the blind man and the elephant. But what it highlights to me is the extent to which the different voices and levels within China have made any kind of straightforward characterization almost impossible. Let me give you a couple of illustrations of this. There's no question but that for purposes of labeling and policy management at the top, all leaders need bumper stickers. Whether that captures the totality of the relationship or not is an open question. On the other hand, if you accept the proposition, as some in China do, that there is this deep, abiding mistrust between the United States and China, the obvious solution clearly is for China to close its doors so malicious American influence would not find its way into China. But that, of course, flies in the face of what has been ongoing in the U.S.-China relationship more or less for decades. Let me mention a specific example of this. On Chinese websites a week or two ago, there was an absolute scurrilous video produced by the propaganda apparatus of the National Defense University, which essentially said that the goal of the United States, this is variously titled as Silent Battle, Silent Conflict, it's been this seamless web since the Dulles brothers to undermine and do in China and so forth. This resonated a lot with some of what Wang Jisa mentioned in the Brookings study, of which I was the reviewer, and I had actually, what he was highlighting, frankly, is what I'll call popular nationalism. Deeply embedded antagonistic feelings that get generated, because the reality is, if it's that bad, I don't know what the hell our two countries are doing. And so I mention that only to say that I hear many voices here in China at a popular level, and Lord knows, as we can see here, characterizations of what the relationship is gives ample fodder for academic audiences.
So, Jonathan, I want to hear. Let's hear a couple more voices before we break for lunch.
Okay, quick and simple question. In the context of the new type of great power relations, how can you see how China and the United States see the trilateral relationship among the United States, China, and Japan? How would you deal with the Japan issues?
Please. Yes.
Hi, thanks very much. I wanted to follow up on the wonderfully straightforward question that the chair posed and also Dr. Liu's answer in terms of the U.S. alliance system and its compatibility with China's vision of the future. And in your answer, you suggested that there was kind of a status quo in Asia and that the Chinese wouldn't be alarmed by the continuation of the U.S. alliances as so long as that status quo in terms of alignments was basically held. And so for me, I just wanted to follow up on that and ask our Chinese members of the panel, yourself and Dr. Gong perhaps, so what would represent changes to you that you would find threatening? So for example, Vietnam came to mind, and I know my government has been, people are saying kind of making nice with Vietnam these days, and certainly far from any sort of alignment, let alone alliance, but that this is a change in recent years. And so could you comment on that or any other examples that come to mind that would represent a change in the status quo in East Asian alignments?
Are there any more questions? And then we'll give a chance for a couple of answers. Yes, please.
Thank you. I have a very simple one-sentence question. This concept of new type or new concept of a great power relationship has a very general connotation, but it has been only used to describe or propose about U.S.-China relationship. Is there any possibility of applying this concept to other major power relationship? Thank you.
Please. I'm being told, please end, so quick. Turn your mic on, please.
Sorry about that. Just a very quick question about the role of Russia in affecting China-US relations in the region. As Russia is starting to be more interested in rebalancing certain alliances in the region, does it have any role on how China-US relations develop there? Thank you.
I think we'll answer these questions over the lunch table, but I do think that particularly the comment by Professor Chu about the trust relationship actually over the last many years, that this has been, we underestimate that sometimes, and obviously it's been a very strong element since Kissinger first stepped his first foot on then Peking Airport. And I think that's something very admirable that we have to remember as the relationship becomes more complex and more complicated and actually more fascinating. So many thanks to everyone, and it was very enjoyable hearing all the views of the panelists. Thank you very much.